How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samech Aleph, Daf 61 of Masechta Nedarim, friends. Today we're talking about Nedarim. Let me tell you. Alright, we're going to start in Daf Samech and Beis, about halfway through the Amud. A little bit more. Shana zo asur b'chol hashana kula. Okay, if the fellow says that he's not gonna, have any wine this year, so then, you can't drink any wine the duration of the year. What do you want me to tell you? Yibaydu de asa kasha. Omer konim yain shani toyem yom my dine ki ayom kiyom echad. Friends, you hear the kasha? The kasha is, a fellow says, so the Mishnah had said, if he says hayom, so it means till the evening. If he says yom echad, then it means 24 hours. What if he says yom? Again, the Mishnah said, giving us two options, hayom or yom echad. What if he just says yom? Falls through the cracks. So for the Gemara, Baidu, Omer konam yain shanitoim yom. Ma'adine. So how do we treat it? K'ayom? Do we treat it like hayom, which means it's also to drink wine till the evening? Or ki yom echad? Or is it like yom echad, which is 24 hours? Toshma amin masnisin. Well, let's make a suggestion from our Mishnah. Konam yain shani toim hayom. If a fellow makes a konam that he's not going to drink wine hayom, ein asur ela ad shetechshach. So if he says hayom, so then he can't drink wine till the evening, implying if he says hayom, he can't drink wine till the evening. Hayom, but if he just says yom, that's an anderazach. That's something else. Ki yom echad omi. Let's treat it like yom echad, and it's 24 hours. But I could also say, I can argue punkt fakert. Omer yom echad asur miyom liyom. It says in the Mishnah, in the next part of the Mishnah, that if he says yom echad, then it's 24 hours, implying so yom echad is 24 hours. Hayom ki hayom domi. But if he just says yom, well then it's like hayom, and it's only till the evening. So this is inconclusive. You can't learn anything from here. You can make the same argument. If you want to say, well, only hayom is till the evening, not yom. You could also say punkt vakert, only yom echad is 24 hours, not yom. So if the people say, we gotta look elsewhere. Omer Ravashi says, Ravashi Toshma Kamanir, konam yain shani toim hashone. So if a fellow says he's not going to drink any wine, he's not going to taste any wine this year, I'm going to babble on. Okay. This Abra Ashana, then it becomes a leap year. So then he's also for the whole leap year. So meaning, if in Tishrei, beginning of the year, he says he's not going to drink wine Hashana, he's not going to drink wine this year. Now, it ends up becoming a leap year. So now there's an extra month added to the year. So we say what? Nisabra Ashana Asubo Vibur. Well then, if it ends up becoming a leap year, still, it includes the leap year, i.e. it's going to be 13 months then, and not 12 months. Hey Chidami. Now what's going on? If we were going to say, like it's written, right, Hashana, Lomli Lemema. Well then, why do I even need to say this? Obviously it's going to be the full 13 months. Rather, it's talking about where he says, Shane, Alma shane ke ashane dami, and we're seeing that we treat shane like hashane, and that it's going to be 13 months. So we see that shane is like hashane, and therefore v'yom nami ke hayom dine, and we'll say oichit that yom is the equivalent of hayom, and it's till the evening. Lo olam da'omer hashane. No, it's like it says in the Brisa, which is hashane. I may have thought to say I may have thought to say that when he says hashane, I might think that it's like most years, and most years only have 12 months, not 13. So I might think that it's only 12 months. Komash Malon. No, it's teaching that it is 13 months and not 12 months. Yibadu de asa kasha. Omer yain shani toim yovel mai. What if he says that he's not going to drink wine for a yovel? Shnas chamishim klifnei chamishim or klacher chamishim. Do we treat year 50 like the as part of the previous Shemitah cycle, or as part of the next Shemitah cycle? Do we treat it as the final year of the Shemitah cycle or the first year of the next Shemitah cycle? So, of course, Shemitahs, there are 7 Shemitahs followed by a Yovel. So Tashma, come in here. The Tanyas we learn in a Brisa. Plukta to Rabbi Yochanan Rabbanon to Machlokus Rabbi Yochanan. What? Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon. V'kidashtem eishnas hachamishim shane. So it says that you will make the 50th year holy. Shnas hachamishim atamone. So the 50th year is, right, it's counted as the 50th year. Right? So you have 7 Shemitahs. Each Shemitah is a 7-year cycle. You have 7 of those, that's 49. Comes to year 50. And we're saying that year 50 is Yovel. So it says, right, I'm going to read that again. Shnas hachamishim atamone. So the 50th year is counted as Yovel. V'i atamone shnas chamishim ve'achas. We don't treat the 50th year both as Yovel, as the 50th year, as well as the ve'achas, as well as the first year of the next 7-year cycle. We do not treat the Yovel as the first year of the next cycle. Therefore, it's the last year Memele of the previous cycle. Mikan Amru, from here they said, Yovel einu ola leminyan shavua, that the 50th year, the Yovel year, does not count as the first year of the next Shemitah cycle. Rabbi Yehuda argues, and he says, Punkt fakert, Omer Yovel ola leminyan shavua, that the 50th year, the Yovel year, counts as the first year of the next Shemitah cycle. Amru lo Rabbi Yehuda, they said to Rabbi Yehuda, Arei Omer, the pasuk says, Shei shonim tizra sadecha, ve'in kanel chomesh. So, remember, according to the Rabbanon, you have 7 Shemitah cycles. That's 49 years. Year 50 is Yovel. And the following year, year 51, essentially, is now the first year of the next Shemitah cycle. Rabbi Yehuda argues, and he says, no. The 50th year is both the Yovel year as well as the first year of the next Shemitah cycle. But then they ask a kasha. The Yovel, the 50th year, Yovel is also a year where you do not work the field. And Yovel, Yoichet, do not work the field. So they ask in Rabbi Yehuda, the pasuk says, Shei shonim tizra sodecha, that for 6 years you plant your field. And then the 7th year is Shemitah. But if year 50 is both Yovel as well as the first year of the next Shemitah cycle, then that means that the first year of that first Shemitah cycle after Yovel, you're also not working the land because it's Yovel, and Yovel you don't work the land, which means that if that's year 1, and in year 1 you're not working the land, and year 7, 5 years later, is going to be Shemitah again, so then you only had 5 years during which, 5 years prior to that first Shemitah, during which you're working the land. But the pasuk says, Shei shonim tizra sadecha, that for 6 years you work the land. Now, if it's like Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the first year of the first Shemitah cycle is actually Yovel from the previous cycle, well, and you're not working the land, well, then you only have 5 years before the first Shemitah, not 6. Friends, you got the kasha? To Rabbi Yehuda says, meh. Rabbi Yehuda says to them, not such a good kasha. I've seen better kashas in my life. Harei Omer, people, let me ask you a kasha. Ve'oso sesatvu l'shlosh hashonim, that Erev Shemitah, the year before Shemitah, that year needs to produce enough food for 3 years. Right? Year 6 of the Shemitah cycle needs to produce enough food for year 6 and Shemitah, which is year 7, as well as year 8 until the harvest. So it needs to produce enough food for 3 years. So now, Arekan Arba. But rabbis, if you say that on year, that after the Shemitah, after the 7-year Shemitah cycle, the 7 cycles of Shemitah, that after year 49, year 50 is then Yovel, and year 51 is the first year of the next cycle. So according to you rabbis, year 48, which is Erev, the year before the last Shemitah, so year 48 then needs to produce enough food for 4 years. Years 48, years 49, 50, and the first year of the next cycle until the harvest, which is 4 years. But the pasuk says, that's only going to be enough for 3 years. So Ella, rather, how do you explain it? You're going to say, when it says that it will be enough food for 3 years, it means in every other Shemitah, that the year prior to Shemitah needs to produce enough food for 3 years. The year before Shemitah, during Shemitah, and the year after. What about the fact that when there's Yovel, it's going to be 4 years? Yovel, it's not talking about Yovel, it's talking about the other ones. And therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, I'll say the same thing. That when it says that you'll work the land for 6 years prior to Shemitah, it's talking about it's not talking about the first cycle, Shemitah cycle. It's talking about the other 6, where you'll have 6 years of working the land before Shemitah. All right, that was fun stuff. Let's go weiter. Ad Pesach also v'chule. Okay, so we had said in the Mishnah that ad pnei Pesach, right? That sort of until the end of Pesach, right, or until Pesach. So Meir Omer also Achiagia, Rabbi Yossi Omer also Achietze. That when he says until Pesach, so Meir says it means until Pesach begins. Until Pesach begins. I.e. until, right when Pesach comes in, that's when the neder is over. If he says that he's not going to drink wine ad pnei Pesach, it means up until the last instant before Pesach begins. Once Pesach begins, the neder is over. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says, well, we don't know exactly if when it says Pesach, it means the beginning of Pesach, or maybe it means during Pesach, or the end of Pesach. So therefore, punkt fakert, he's got to wait until the last instant of Pesach. And maybe it's talking about before the last instant of Pesach. So essentially the very end of Pesach. Because we don't know exactly which instant of Pesach he's talking about. So the Meimer de Reb Meir Sover lo ma'al in ishnavshe l'sveike v'Reb Yossi Sover ma'al in ishnavshe l'sveike. So is it possible that what the Mishnah is saying, that Reb Meir says people avoid suffix. People avoid doubtful situations. Therefore, if he made a neder, he's not going to drink wine ad pnei Pesach, until before Pesach. It means until before Pesach begins. Once Pesach begins, the neder is over. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says no. When he says until before Pesach, I don't know if it means before Pesach starts, or maybe before the end of Pesach, some other part of Pesach. Therefore, you have to wait all the way till the end of Pesach, according to Rabbi Yossi, because we don't know exactly what he had in mind. So therefore, is it saying that Rabbi Meir says a fellow is going to avoid all case of doubt, and therefore definitely when he said that he's not going to drink wine ad pnei Pesach, means before Pesach begins, and that's that. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says no, a person can put himself in a situation of doubt, and therefore we have to, go as stringently and say until the very last instant of Pesach. He can't drink wine. Very many, but we have Taka Akasha. Misheyesh lo shtei kitei bonis, mishtei noshim. So it's shtickle yavamasi, but nothing too difficult. The hardest thing is to figure out what ages I should give them, because it's hard with the Gemara to. Anyways, let's keep things legal over here and say that we're talking about daughters who are 21, 20, 19, and 18. So therefore, okay. So you have a Reuven. Reuven's married to Sarah and Rivka. Sarah's got 2 daughters, a 21-year-old and a 20-year-old, and Rivka's got 2 daughters, a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old. Okay, now, and Reuven says, I was Mekadesh, right? I married off my big daughter. The question is, now I don't know. Does that mean the 21-year-old? Maybe it means the 19-year-old, right? The older of Rivka's daughters. Or maybe it means the 20-year-old, the younger of the older ones, Shehi Gedola Mina Gedola, who's bigger than Mina Gedola Shebektanos, she's bigger than the 19-year-old, who's the bigger one of the smaller ones. So we don't know. She's talking about the 21-year-old, the 20-year-old, the 19-year-old. Kulan Asuris Chutz Mina Ktanas Shebektanos Divrei Meir. So one thing we know is that the youngest of them all is not what he's talking about. Right? He says he married off his older daughter. Clearly, he's not talking about the 18-year-old, the absolute youngest. But it could be the 21-year-old, could be the 19-year-old, could be the 20-year-old. That's Rav Meir's opinion. So Rav Meir is saying that a fellow put himself in a situation of suffix. Rabbi Yossi Omer, whereas Rabbi Yossi says, Kulan mutaros chutz min hagdolos shebgedolos. Look, they're all permitted. Clearly, he's talking about the eldest, the 21-year-old. So we see that Rabbi Meir is putting himself in a suffix situation, in which, right, that the guy's putting himself in a suffix situation, therefore the 21, the 20, and the 19-year-old are all usher. Whereas Rabbi Yossi is saying, no, he won't put himself in a situation of suffix. Therefore, if it says the oldest one, he means the oldest one, the 21-year-old. Amr B'chanina bar Avdimi, says Reb Chanina bar Avdimi, Amrav Muchlefes ha-shite, Says that it's punkt vakert. The Mishnah is backwards. That it's Reb Meir who will put himself in a situation of Safek, and Reb Yossi will not. And therefore it's Reb Meir who says that when he says he's not going to drink wine ad pnei Pesach, Reb Meir is the one who says that he will be in a situation of a Safek, and therefore means he can't drink wine till the end of Pesach. Whereas Reb Yossi says he wouldn't put himself in a situation of Safek, and therefore he could drink wine up until Pesach begins, and then he can't drink wine anymore. That's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Vatanya, as we learn in the Brisa, Ze'aklal, this is the rule, Kol Shezmanu Kavua ve'Omer Ad Pnei, that if something that has a fixed time, and he says Ad Pnei, Rabbi Meir Omer Ad Sheyetze, means he's got to wait till the end. Rabbi Yossi Omer Ad Sheyagia, until it arrives, something that has a fixed time, like Pesach, for example, it's 7 days. So Rabbi Yossi would say that he would avoid a situation of a Safek, and therefore it means until Pesach begins. Whereas Reb Meir would say it means until the end of Pesach, because we have to be concerned that we're not exactly sure if he's what point of Pesach is referring to. Therefore, he has to wait till the end. So we see that it's Reb Meir who says a fellow would put himself in a situation of Safek. Reb Yossi says a fellow would not put himself in a situation of a Safek. Says in the Mishnah, a fellow says he's not going to drink wine until the wheat harvest, or until the grape harvest, or until the olive harvest. Eino aser Ella ad sheyagia. So he can't drink wine until the harvest season begins. This is the rule. Kol shezmanu kavua, something that has a fixed time. For example, Pesach. V'amar sheyagia, that he says until it comes. Also ad sheyagia, that he's also until Pesach comes. Amar ad sheyehei, until it will have been. Also ad sheyetze, and it's also until Pesach is over. V'chol she'ein zmanu kavua, but if it doesn't have a distinct time, for example, a harvest, it's not an objective length of time. Ben omer ad sheyehei, whether he says until it has been, ben omer ad sheyegel, or whether he says until it arrives, makes no difference. And also ela ad sheyegel, it's only going to be also until it arrives, because since it's a subjective length of time, a fellow would not put himself in a situation of a Safek like that, and he definitely means until it begins. Arakayitz, if a fellow says until the fig harvest, or until the fig harvest is over, so again, that's not an objective length of time. It means until people start taking out their baskets, start bringing, filling up their baskets with figs and bringing them in. At that point, the neder is up. But if he says until the fig harvesting passes, that means, well, then he can't drink wine until people start putting away their knives. Says the Gemara Tane, we learn in the Brisa, that when they said these baskets that they're filling up, we're talking about baskets of figs. We're not talking about baskets of grapes. Tani, we learn in the Brisa, somebody who says he's not going to have the Peris Hakayitz, these fruits that are picked by hand. It's specifically referring to figs. Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer Anovim Bichlal Te'enim. Says Reb Shimon Gamliel that no, it includes grapes as well. My time, the Tanakama, how come the Tanakama says it's only figs? Kasavar Te'enim Mikatsutzam Biyodo, Anovim Le Mikatsutzam Biyodo. Because Tanakama holds, look, you pick figs by hand, you don't pick grapes by hand. By grapes, you cut the cluster, you don't pick each individual grape by hand. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, Anov Nami, Kimadam Mikatsutzam Biyodo, that even grapes as well, once they kind of get dried out, then the stem gets dried out, you pull them off with your hands as well, so it can even refer to grapes. Friends, that was the Samach Aleph of Masechta Nedarim. We wanted to know if, what's the deal with Yom? Is it like Hayom or Yom Echad? So we wanted to say that it's like Hayom. Okay, fine. Then we asked the Kasha about Yovel. We saw machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon about, is the 50th year considered a part of the previous cycle, or is it considered the first year of the next cycle? The Rabbanon say that year 50 is not the first year of the next cycle. And Rabbi Yehuda says that year 50, that Yovel is also the first year of the next Shemitah cycle. We then quoted our Mishnah, where it sounded like Reb Meir was saying that a fellow does not put himself into a situation of Safek. Rabbi Yossi says a fellow does put himself in a situation of Safek. We then proved that it's taka punkt vakert. that Reb Meir says that a person will put himself in a situation of suffix, and Rabbi Yossi says a fellow would not put himself in a situation of suffix. And then we learned an interesting rule, which is that whenever we have something that has a fixed time, so then if he says until it begins, so it means until it begins, but if he says until it was, well then it means until the end. But if it's something that doesn't have a fixed time, such as a harvest, it's not an objective amount of time, so then whether he says until it arrives or until it was, it means until it begins. Friends, that was Daf Samach Aleph of Masechta Nedarim. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.